Governor, thanks very much. I'm going to talk a little bit about the process that we have used over the last 6 months, the process we followed in this mid-biennium review that we have undertaken. Then I'm going to talk a little bit about the components, the products, and then I'll talk about the management efficiency plan, which is the component that I have been involved most closely in throughout. It's been one heck of a 6 months that we have, the administration, the cabinet, the staff, have worked on the programs that we're outlining here today. I have been very pleased to be involved in this. I've been involved in budget activities for over 26 years, and I had never seen anything like this. It started with the governor, who, as many of you know, served for a number of years in the United States Congress, who was actively involved in budget activities. He's used to annual budgets. There's so much to get done in Ohio. The governor has so many ideas and reforms in mind to move this state forward that he was just not prepared to wait 2 more years until the next biennial budget to continue the progress. There was a period of time where we talked about annual budgets, and that caused great concern in many quarters, including OBM. But we have passed the biennial budget with significant reforms, restructuring getting our finances back in order, structural balance. We took advantage of this year to then think about how to further advance the reforms that the governor has announced, and that's what we worked on. All of the cabinet agencies were asked to identify reform work that was not ready for the budget, that we have identified since the budget was passed, and to advance those ideas. To think about how we can improve the programs that they all administer. To think about their administrative operations, how we can be more efficient and effective with the taxpayers' dollars. So that charge went out to all the cabinet agencies. We got back a number of ideas that we've discussed and worked through over this period of time, and culminates today with the presentation of this process. Additionally, OBM led a process whereby we reviewed all of the appropriation line items in the budget bill, both the general revenue fund appropriations, the non-general revenue fund appropriations, to have a sense of where we can squeeze out some additional efficiencies, where there are some savings available, in order to continue forward with the governor's objective of providing the most efficient and effective service for Ohioans, and doing so in a way that we limit the burden on Ohio's taxpayers. In this process, what you'll see is that we have appropriation reductions, we have alignments of appropriation line items that are associated with some of the reforms that we'll outline here today, and then in a very limited number of instances there are some increased appropriation authority provided to select programs. The outcome of this process, essentially, 4 main areas of reform that we're going to be talking about today. There's the government efficiency and healthcare systems reform, which will be contained in a bill that I will talk about next week in the House Finance Committee, which we're characterizing as the management efficiency plan. There are energy reforms that Wayne will talk about shortly. There are education and workforce development reforms, which Dick Ross will talk about, as will Rich Frederick. And then I'll culminate talking about the capital bill, which we have been working on simultaneous, to the chagrin of the staff at OBM, with the MBR process. Before I turn to the management efficiency plan itself, I just want to commend the staff of the Office of Budget Management, and particularly my Assistant Director, Chris Whistler, for the hard work that they've put in over this period of time in putting together this plan of attack that we're announcing today. Really, a lot of good folks at OBM do a great job, and I get to get up here and stand up here and talk about this, but it's their work that makes a lot of this possible, and I really appreciate that. So turning to the particular results of the management efficiency plan, first, tax reforms. Important tax reforms to help make Ohio more competitive as we move forward to try to make Ohio a great place for job creation. High on the list, reducing Ohio's personal income tax, which is one of our leading challenges in improving our economic competitiveness. We are proposing a program that will reduce the personal income tax across the board for all Ohioans using the proceeds of a very moderate and competitive severance tax modernization program. Essentially, the proceeds of that severance tax, the net proceeds, will be deposited into a fund that will be used to reduce personal income taxes of Ohioans in the following tax year. It is expected that this could approach $1 billion over 5 years, this tax relief. At full peak production, this tax cut could easily approach, it could be a 5% reduction, 5% rate reduction for all Ohioans. This will move us toward a better competitive position on personal income tax. Modernization of taxation of financial institutions. Financial institutions in this state are generally taxed under two systems. Many by the remnants of the old corporate franchise tax, which was eliminated for most payers in the 2005 tax reform, and another, a 1930s era dealers and intangibles tax. Frankly, the corporate franchise tax, riddled with loopholes. Many of the large banks in this state are beginning to exploit those loopholes in such a way that the ongoing viability of the tax is jeopardized. We must move now to ensure a fair and appropriate tax system. The administration has developed a tax reform proposal that will reduce taxation on most financial institutions, that will eliminate the possibility of loopholes for those who have been using them, and will incentivize, frankly, the small businesses, freeing up capital for them to be able to continue, and the small banks to continue to be able to make loans to stimulate Ohio growth. A couple other loophole closings in this bill, including a mechanism that prevents limited liability corporations that are set up for the sole purpose of owning recreational vehicles, boats, for example, from avoiding paying the sales tax. And another to ensure that affiliates of insurance companies, in fact, pay the commercial activity tax, which they were potentially avoiding. Again, just taking a look at this tax code, trying to make sure it's fair and appropriate for all taxpayers in Ohio.
And let me just jump in and say a word about this. We believe that being able to limit the deductions from the capital requirements of the big banks will allow the community banks to see rate reductions. We think that's very positive. Okay? That is a loophole. In other words, it was never intended for people to be able to use these deductions in such a way as to reduce their liability to extremely low levels. People may say, well, what about the rest of the loopholes? We'd love to see all the loopholes they have. But a loophole is not defined as, for example, we exempted dry cleaners from the sales tax. That's an exemption, not a loophole. So, you know, loopholes, and I'm kind of the guy that started the tax on corporate welfare back when I was in the House on loophole closings, which was an unintended, for example, opportunity for pharmaceutical companies to locate their operations in Puerto Rico and escape taxation. There's a difference between a loophole and an exemption from a tax. So when we hear this thrown about you know, loophole closings, you know, you've got to make sure that you're talking about a loophole closing as opposed to an exemption. This was a big one and one that we felt comfortable with, but we welcome anybody to come forward with what they define as loophole closings. If they want to put a tax on somebody that they currently don't have, that's a legitimate thing to raise. But let's not try to argue that that somehow is unintended, because the legislature clearly intended to exempt them. And I think it's important that we're able to determine, you know, make a different determination between a tax exemption and a loophole closing. But you got any more loopholes do you want closed? Bring them to us.